Hello, everyone, and welcome to Osquery Office Hours. It's late May in Boston. There's lots of flowers and it's sunny. Hopefully, nice weather where others are as well. Wherever you are, there's always weather. And yeah, so Osquery. Anyone have any announcements or highlights since the last meeting? Okay, cool. Next section of our standing agenda is an open section for questions, issues, or PRs that people want to discuss. So the intent here is to have anyone who happens to be dropping in, asking questions, stuff like that. Not sure if anyone wants to raise anything. James is here. James works with me and has a PR up, so maybe he wants to talk about that, but I don't see Marcos, so I don't know. Zach, do you know if Marcos is coming today?
Let me see. Seems like he probably ought to be. Is this the Windows search PR?
Yeah.
Got it. And Marcos is reviewing that, I assume, or has been.
Yeah, I don't even know if there's anything that we need to talk about or are blocked on or anything. Just, I think that's why James is here.
I
I
guess.
just kind of
Go ahead,
just
James.
showing up to see if anyone had any questions or anything like that. Anything to.
Do you want me to? I can just give Marcos another ping on that, especially if we're about to try to get this release out and we want to get that in, which I would think we want to get that in.
Yeah, he actually pinged me right before the meeting, so that he was going to look at it soon.
Oh,
so
okay.
You guys will show up anyway, in case anyone else had any questions.
All right, cool.
He's active on the PR, so I don't think you need to ping him. And we're not going to get this release cut today, so I think we're okay.
Cool. And I see in the notes this is listed as one of those one that we want to get on the release. So
yeah, I think we want to get this one in. One thing that I'll call out, which is kind of cool, is across James, Marcos, and myself, we found a non-EAV style for passing sort of additional data in, which is kind of neat. So people may want to take a peek at that spec file, because I don't think we have this as a pattern yet inside Osquery.
Sorry, this is for Windows search, you said?
Yeah, it's got a new pattern in it, which is always a little mixed, but I think it's good.
Yeah, so there's like, I don't know, there's like 200 columns or something like that, possible columns in the system index you can grab from. So obviously we don't want to have 200 columns on the table. So you can just put in another like a where clause to give me these additional properties, and they'll show up in a JSON format. Then you can use the SQL JSON to pull them out and manipulate them as you want to.
Yes, I like that idea. The SQLite JSON stuff is pretty good and allows a lot of flexibility. If I remember, Upticks did something like this in their kube query, where they parse out like a few of the fields, but then there's a bunch more additional data that they just return as JSON and not parsed out, and kind of leave it for you to do like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it sounds awesome to me.
Cool.
Cool. Well, nothing to talk about that. Alessandro, you've got a PR.
Yeah, so we are working with an extension that is directly logging data as events, and which works really fine. Like, it's a big improvement compared to just doing what you normally do in an extension. However, there's a problem with thread. And the problem is that for each string you try to log, Osquery will create a thread, which is not really great. And so given that it is supported in core, I've created an additional request that batches things together. So instead of sending one string at a time and creating one thread at a time, with batching, we can solve this problem.
I feel like I've heard people say that events aren't really supported over the extensions API. Is that real, or is that always just kind of been a weird bugaboo, maybe because of this lack of batching support?
So there are two supported ways in Osquery to generate events. The first one is using the pub/sub system that we have. That is not exported to the extension interface. But the logging primitives they are accessible through the registry API. And it is up to you to choose whether you want to use one method or the other. If you require filtering, like in audit, for example, where you have different types of events, maybe each subscriber needs to ignore some events, handle others, and in that case, you definitely need to use the pub/sub. But otherwise, if you are only pushing out events, you can directly access the logger APIs and skip the additional abstraction, which would just be overhead.
So I'm looking at, in this case, the logging would be like is there even a SQL query at all here in this case?
In our case, no. Not in our case.
So when the extension calls this log string batch, they are basically saying just put this out to the regular logger plugin as if it were a result with exactly the JSON that it provides, or?
Yes, we are, in our extension, we are streaming the events directly to the logger.
Are you able to publicly talk about what the extension is?
So it is an internal project, so I cannot talk too much about it. But yeah, it is event publishing.
So this is interesting because this brings up a perennial conversation we have around high throughput logging effectively, right? And I think it's one of the things Uptycs has jousted with and has generally probably kept them away from the core, is that they've wanted to do a lot of things that just bypassed the entire SQL layer to push logs through.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a step in that direction, I guess.
Well, I think it is just an additional API, which, I mean, it is already supported if you look through the file I changed. The use case is documented there in the comments. This is mostly a way to reduce the amount of things that we have to call through the registry.
Mm-hmm. So this would basically allow how would this sort of, how does this work? Does this just create a new thrift endpoint? Not endpoint, a new thrift function or something? So like if you were an extension and you wanted to push things directly into the string logs, presumably this isn't in response to a generate call.
In our case, no, it's not.
So it's just, I don't know the word for thrift function calls, but it's basically just a new thrift function call.
Yeah, it is a new one, which is just an alternative to the simple string request. Normally, you would loop through your data and issue one string request for each item. The new request will batch all the items into single request, and the looping happens within Osquery itself.
Right. So go on.
Are there any examples of extensions that are logging directly with the regular string interface right now?
I haven't.
Public ones? I'm just trying to like align this to my understanding of how people are using things currently.
I haven't really checked.
So we already exposed this, but we expose it as a singular, and you're adding a batch endpoint to it.
Yes. We also have an alternative one that is for specifically for events. I'm only implementing the one for string, which is the one I'm using.
So I know this PR doesn't change the thrift definition. Do we have to change that, or is it how does that work?
No, there is no change required.
Why not?
Because we're using the same infrastructure architecture. It's just a new, like, we're passing string as let's say parameters and actions. So it is just a different action that we are now supporting.
So like the thrift endpoint already declared a string endpoint that basically took an array, but
Yeah.
it was being dumb, and for every item in the array, it was creating a new thread, and now you've just exposed the batch interface.
Yeah.
This sounds an awful lot like a non-issue. It sounds like an obvious thing to add then. For all I might want bigger questions about, how do we feel being a log forwarder, it sounds like we already have that functionality and you're just optimizing it.
Yeah, I'm also looking into additional. Yeah, I was trying to see if there are ways to improve the buffered log forwarder. See if we can reduce the amount of RocksDB operations we perform. Maybe batch them in a better way. Reduce the amount of scans we are doing. Yeah, it's part of an effort in trying to make Osquery more resilient against high throughput logging.
Yeah, I mean the I see the code changes look pretty small, so I also don't object to this. I think that it might be useful to add an update to the documentation to show how this would actually be used, if there's an appropriate place in the documentation for that.
Yeah, I will look for that.
Do you want me to drop a comment on the PR about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Okay, my feeling is that we already for good or ill, we already exposed this functionality. So if we expose it already, then simply making it go faster seems reasonable. Yeah, that you're not changing the thrift definition seems fine. Zach, you said you're reviewing that?
I dropped a comment on there.
Okay. Okay. Release 5.9.0. Feel like we should do that real soon now. This morning I was starting to go over code reviews on that, and I didn't finish. I think one of the only things that I kind of remember is I think Stefano said that the CPU usage stuff was not likely to be ready because he wanted to like rethink a bunch of that. He said that in office hours last week. So
he's in PTO today, but I know he's working on reworking how that works, thinking about it.
yeah, my impression was probably not for 590 though.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, I will just kick that forward then. And there's a bunch of other pretty little things here.
Can we get the 8025 in as well? It's already approved.
8025, almost certainly. What is 8025?
Already approved.
I approved it this morning. Yeah, we can merge that. Here, I'll stick that in the milestone. Feel free to stick things in the milestone, like, you know. I probably approved it, and I was just going to let Stefano merge it when he wanted to. Though if he's out today, we could just merge it for him.
Yeah, it's going to be out for a couple of days.
Okay, I clicked merge for him. It'll look tiny. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of little improvements from Dreamer Dead to, I know Marcos has been going back and forth on some of them. I feel like as many of those as we can squeak in would probably be good. They all feel like low-hanging fruit in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see all of a bunch of those are in the 590 milestone.
Yeah. Is there anything in these to talk about? I'm not sure there's anything to talk about.
There's one that adds another data type in keychain items. It's pretty simple. Basically adds
Yeah.
hash of a public key. It's 8002. I think that would be nice to get that in as well. And I can review it in the next 10 minutes.
I am generally supportive. The one question I have, is that a standard hash? Like if I use OpenSSL to look at a keychain, do I get that? And if not, why not? Like, can we make it match whatever the standard formatting is?
I don't know the answer to that. Let me try and figure that out.
I'll comment on the PR.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't, because I think OpenSSL frequently
yeah.
maybe puts colons in between every octet or something.
Yeah, it might just need a little bit of pretty printing.
Yeah, so if we can figure out how to get that to match formatting wise, I think that would be even better. We have a PR that updates unified log, I think in a good way, but I haven't wrapped my head around it yet.
That 8019?
Yeah.
I was just looking at that.
So my memory from when we merged the unified log support is that there's this magic behavior around kind of faking an events table by tracking last timestamp. And when we merged it, we noted that it only supported one magic timestamp. And if you had like two queries, they'd kind of fight with each other over it. And I think this PR is trying to address that. So if all of that memory is correct, it feels like a natural follow-on, but I haven't read the implementation of the details.
It also adds a predicate similar to the Apple's built-in logger util.
Yeah, I mean the reading the description and the documentation updates, it all makes sense to me. The code, I'm not so familiar with.
The predicate column intuitively makes sense, but it's like a SQL within a SQL, which feels weird. But I don't know how else we would do it. And normalizing that data is kind of hard.
We kind of have to do it for MD find and for Windows search. And then on launcher, we have some similar ones. So it feels like sometimes you can't get away from smuggling SQL-like things through a column.
Yeah.
Now, this might be reasonable to get into 590 as well. Marcos, welcome. And any questions? Anything you want to bring?
Yeah, three things. Sorry, guys, I joined late. I had to attend a meeting that went so long. So yeah, I have three things. 7990, the Windows search PR. So we are finalizing that with James. Hey, James. So hopefully that is going to be done soon, so we can have it on the upcoming release. Then I have a 7991, which is the Safari extension one. That's pretty much ready for inclusion. I also have a 7974, which is the fix for the Python packages table. Yeah, so I think that one is ready too.
Where did we leave 7974?
So there was a missing scenario that had to be covered, which is the thing that you mentioned, the cyclic reference of a symlink, basically a symlink pointing to itself.
Right.
So I created a test case for that scenario and happened to be an issue. So it was a good finding. So I addressed the issue and added a test case to cover that scenario. Yeah, and that was the last thing that I.
So there was an infinite recursion bug, and you fixed it.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah. That's it.
Anyone want to review this? Otherwise, I'm kind of good. We were all kind of good before, and we found a theoretical bug, and Marcos fixed it. So, barring objections, I'm just going to approve this. Okay, is approved.
Good, thank you.
So, and it's approved, and Marcos, you're a committer now, so you can commit it.
Good, we'll do it. We'll do it right now.
I have not looked at 7991 enough to just approve it that quickly. But I did tag it into the milestone, so we won't just forget about it, at least.
Yeah, and I added it onto the agenda for here. I think basically the one thing that I wanted to do was just build that locally and test it that it works against another system. It all looked sensible to me what you did.
Okay, that's a good point.
Cool. Anyone want to talk about anything? Anyone doing anything really fun with Osquery? If not, we could end this slightly early.
All right.
Oh, I'll tell people our Apple account expired and I renewed it, so that's done.
Thank you, Seth. Did that cost money, and did you reimburse yourself?
Apple sponsors us.
Oh, nice.
We're a
Good.
nonprofit, so Apple doesn't charge us money.
Thank you, Apple.
I appreciate your nudging me to file expenses. Yeah, that side eye is deserved. Thank you, Zach.
I think we talked a while ago about using Cloudflare R2. Like, I've been using it for some things, and it's been working well. We can look into doing that at some point if we want to.
I mean, I guess we got half an hour, so I could talk about it quickly. So the bulk of the Osquery hosting costs stem from the package download server, right? We host an RPM and Ubuntu package server. It is, last time I looked at it, it served on the order of 2 terabytes a day. And as it turns out, 2 terabytes a day is, yeah, it's more than most things do for free. That content is mostly in Ubuntu packages, so it's not the website and it's not the releases file. It's basically just things hammering and downloading Ubuntu, primarily through AWS. Actually, it's mostly, like, as far as I can tell, it's mostly a single AWS VPC. Details a little unclear to me. We've been through several iterations of how we serve that data. The current iteration predates R2 and works by, so downloading a file from a bucket inside AWS is free if you are within the same region, but cross-region bills the bucket owner. So the way this is currently set up is we have one bucket which then mirrors out to other buckets in each region, and there is a set of Cloudflare rules that routes things by IP address into whatever their region is. It's kind of a big static mapping of things. It's a little bit messy. I never made it super nice, but it works. So a request comes in from Amazon US East, gets routed to the US East mirror bucket, things like that. It's kind of messy. Moving it to R2 shouldn't be hard because R2 is nominally compatible. So, like, we ought
S3 compatible API, yeah.
Yeah, we ought to be able to, like, change the way we do the package uploads and basically just mirror the entire thing into R2 and then set that up as a destination. It'll probably work if someone wants to try and clean up the way we manage the package stuff.
Are we advertising packages through this is through package.osquery.io, right? So we should be able to change the DNS.
I expect so, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
because
Right.
we've moved it
We're not
around.
giving people a direct S3 host name or something that they do these downloads
I don't
from.
think so. We maybe once did. There might be a couple of people, but I know most of the usage comes in through that HTTP endpoint.
Got it.
Because it was all running through Cloudflare for a while, through CloudFront for a while.
All right.
And that's what currently is doing the region redirection.
Right.
Um,
And CloudFront lets you save a little bit off of the raw S3 costs, but not enough.
CloudFront is more than S3, but
Oh, really?
it's complicated.
Okay.
We're currently using CloudFront to do the redirection. So CloudFront is kind of acting like a global load balancer. So it gets the response, returns a redirect to the regional bucket, and then the regional bucket serves the actual data, which
Okay.
is possibly not the way you would want to do it if you weren't like trying to write something hokey at 2 a.m. But it works. Yeah, actually serving all the content through Cloud Front would be more expensive, and not having the bucket redirection would also be more expensive because of the cross-region things.
Got it.
And then Amazon also has some other things that nominally target this use case, but also cost more. So it was kind of the cheapest thing I could come up with, and it's lasted for a little while. R2 might just be fine. Probably, there's like this other question of probably we could just deploy a server that just spits data back, and it wouldn't be that hard. But I haven't.
Yes, and I did that actually. I did that. I used like Caddy on
Yeah.
Hetzner, and Hetzner gives you like 20 terabytes of free
Not enough
egress.
bandwidth for what we're doing.
No, I think that R2 is likely a good option here. But it's also like, man, the thing is currently working. Really the biggest thing is we just need to get you filing the expense receipts.
We should stop paying this much money, honestly.
Yeah.
So the argument for R2, so if I were sitting down and building this for Collide, I have not evaluated Wasabi, JD. Tell me about it. Wasabi used to be a BSD company.
I'll see if my audio works here. Wasabi is a flat rate based on the amount of data that you're storing, and they don't have egress fees.
Last time I looked at Wasabi, they don't have egress fees, but you're only allowed to download like about as much as you're storing or something like
Yeah,
that. Like it doesn't work with the terms of service.
Okay.
But that always hides. People are like, free egress, and you go looking, and they're like, for 5 gigabytes, and you're like,
Yeah, it's Wasabi is like maybe you can do up to like 5x what you're storing, but I think the biggest issue is with Osquery. It's like we're storing a few gigabytes of stuff, but people are downloading terabytes a day. So I looked pretty closely at R2, and they are like you can store whatever you want. There's clear pricing on how it's done, and it's on a per request basis, not a per byte basis. And it comes out way cheaper unless you have tiny files.
Yeah. So one of the things, like, some of this I think comes down to what we want to do and how much time and energy any of us want to put into maintaining an RPM and depackage server. Our current setup is very unusual. Let's say we have an RPM and a depackage server that is created by some piece of software that I don't remember and just served out of a bucket. So this is managed by something in the GitHub Actions flow. It creates basically an RPM server and a depackage server, which is kind of weird and unusual, and ends up feeling a little bit limiting because there are things we could do if we wanted to make a bigger project of it. Right, like GitHub serves all these files for us too, but you can't use GitHub as a target for depackage. Or for app. So we'd have to like come up with some set of redirect symlinks again. So there's like kind of some weird stuff. Or you could certainly imagine. I wouldn't want to serve all the content through fly.io or whatever the H1 you're using, Zach. But like you could imagine setting up a server that did the same redirects that I'm doing in Cloudflare, and like that would probably be cheaper. So there's all these little threads to pull on, and I haven't really wanted to pull on them.
Did you said the issue is with using GitHub is specifically the apt repos?
Yeah, so PKG is an apt repo or an RPM repo. So how do you do that using GitHub releases?
Oh, we need to do the issue is RPM.
It's both. It's both. PKG is both a Yum server and a apt server.
Okay, so like here's a project that claims to do it for apt.
Yeah. I
No. Okay.
I have looked at most of these.
Okay.
Yeah, that thing's 4 years old and hasn't been touched. So a lot of those, so they might work. Okay, so from memory, apt, the way apt works is apt downloads a metadata file called releases, and releases points to relative paths that contain the relative paths to the binaries, or to the packages, excuse me. So if your packages are hosted at GitHub, then your releases file would also have to be hosted at GitHub, right? Because it's all relative paths. So you can do that. So there's a couple of projects out there that are kind of, I think they could all work, but they would all need to be understood and modernized, right? That are kind of about, okay, so if these are my release location, if these are my package downloads, let me generate a releases file using these relative paths. Or the other way, depending on what kind of hosting you have, right? If your hosting is charged per byte, you could imagine setting up a server that acts as an app repo, but for the actual downloadable packages serves redirects out to GitHub, right? So you could do something like that. So that maybe makes sense. So I can see like all these little threads to pull on, and then I get into decision paralysis and I decide not to go doing anything.
Got it. So it sounds like if we have something that can just sort of host arbitrary files, which R2 is, then we already know how to set up the right file structure, and so that's plausibly a better way than trying to figure out how to do it on GitHub.
Yeah, like it doesn't feel as good in a way, right? It feels like, well, we already have this kind of janky thing. Let's just move the janky thing to a different janky thing. But it's kind of less work in another way.
I mean, using a static file hosting system doesn't feel that janky to me. That feels like the way to do these things. It almost feels more janky to try to do it with GitHub.
GitHub definitely more janky. The janky part is like we have this weird repository making tooling that I don't know.
Okay,
what it
no one really knows how to use it.
Yeah, and I don't know if we wrote it or someone else wrote it.
Okay, so that's the janky part. That makes sense.
Yeah. I wonder, let me see if I have, it's been a while since I've run any cost analysis on this stuff. Osquery package hosting. Okay, so my numbers are going to be a little bit old, but the last time I pulled numbers, about a year ago, we were doing approximately 2.5 million requests a day. And that looks like it would be somewhere in the realm of $10 on R2. So that's pretty inexpensive. That sound right? Probably.
Is that per day?
Let's see. Class B operations on R2.
Oh, you're right.
36 cents per million requests.
What's
so
Class A?
70. Class A is writes.
Oh, Class A is right. So okay, Class B. Here, I'll actually use a proper calculator. R2. How did I do this? 11 times B3. Okay, so R2 is 36. So that might not be that cheap. Let's find out.
You said 2.5 million requests per day?
We do about 75 million in a month.
So that's 75 times, or that's 65 times 0.36.
75
Be
times
25
0.36.
bucks.
About
Yeah.
30 bucks a month. Yeah.
Well, our numbers are probably bigger, but yeah, okay, that's about an order of magnitude cheaper. So, does this come plugged into an HTTP interface or just an S3 interface?
Is your question like, does it serve up the files over HTTP? Yeah, it does. Yeah.
That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, it does. It for uploads, it has an S3 interface. Plus, I think there's some sort of HTTP interface. But for downloads, yeah, there's like straight up. It just serves it over HTTPS. I don't know if we'll have challenges with certificate issuance or anything, or if we'd have to move other DNS over to Cloudflare or something to do that. But I think Cloudflare is a pretty well-respected place where we could move some DNS if we needed to. Medium.
I'll say Cloudflare is a perfectly secure company, and I would not have any security-related qualms about moving our services to them.
Okay.
They've also generally been remarkably pro-Nazi, so I have some moral issues, but I can maybe get over them.
Mm.
Yeah, Cloudflare. Okay. Maybe I should really revisit this Cloudflare thing. Thank you for nudging me again. Other stuff? I guess, does anyone want to try and play with the R2 stuff?
I want to, but I keep finding myself not having time.
Yeah.
Which is why, honestly, my number one solution would be like you should just start getting reimbursement stuff.
Yeah, probably. I should figure out how to file those because it's probably good for the project. Okay. Is there other stuff we want to talk about? If not, can we end a few minutes early, and if people have time, we can go review some PRs. Take some notes on the R2 thing into our minutes.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you all for code reviews, contributions, nudging me to go reimburse things, everything. Thank you all for being amazing.
Thank you for running the show, Seth.
Thanks, Seth.
A little bit.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
All right,
all.
guys.
Bye.